wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
What do you think Heracles would have amounted to if there had not been a lion like the one he encountered, and a hydra and a stag and a boar, and wicked and brutal men whom he made it his business to drive out and clear away? And what would he have been doing had nothing of the sort existed? Is it not clear that he would have just rolled himself up in a blanket and slept? In the first place, then, he would never have become Heracles by slumbering away his whole life in such luxury and ease. But even if he had, of what good would he have been? What would have been the use of those arms of his, and of his prowess in general, and his steadfastness and nobility, had not such circumstances and occasions aroused and exercised him?
What then? Ought he to have prepared these for himself, and sought to bring a lion into his own country from somewhere or other, and a boar, and a hydra?
That would have been folly and madness. But since they did exist, and were found in the world, they were serviceable as a means of revealing and exercising Heracles. Epictetus, Discourses, Book 1.6.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. My name is Steve, coming to you from Central Ohio, and I'm joined, as per usual, with my co-host, Dan. Dan?
Hello, everybody.
How's New York?
New York is right now, it's pretty good.
We're going to get some snow here in Ohio this weekend. How is it going to fall your way as well?
Yeah, they're predicting 10 to 15 inches this weekend, and that'll be interesting.
I guess it falls on the good and the wicked alike.
That's right.
Something like that.
Are we the good or the wicked?
No comment. So, last time we met, we discussed the virtue of temperance, self-control. And this week we are going to continue our journey through the Cardinal Virtues with courage. As I like to call it, fortitude, although those might be slightly different things. But the Latin translation is fortitudo, as you can hear my wife say in the introduction of the podcast. So fortitude or courage could mean a number of things. So we talked about self-control, but it can also be like fortitude can be a form of inner strength and resilience, much like Epictetus said, bear and forbear, or persist and resist, that strength to persist and resist. But it can also be courage in the face of hardship, battle, etc. And we'll talk a bit about that in this episode. So how about first we hear from Seneca. Moral Letters to Lucilius, number 67.
You ask me whether every good is desirable. You say, if it is a good to be brave under torture, to go to the stake with a stout heart, to endure illness with resignation, it follows that these things are also desirable. But I do not see that any of them is worth praying for. At any rate, I have as yet known of no man who has paid a vow by reason of having been cut to pieces by the rod, or twisted out of shape by the gout, or made taller by the rack. Well, my dear Lucilius, you must distinguish between these cases. You will then comprehend that there is something in them that is to be desired. I should prefer to be free from torture, but if the time comes when it must be endured, I shall desire that I may conduct myself therein with bravery, honor, and courage. Of course, I prefer that war should not occur, but if war does occur, I shall desire that I may nobly endure the wounds, the starvation, and all the exigency of war. Nor am I so mad as to crave illness. But if I must suffer illness, I shall desire that I may do nothing which shows a lack of restraint. The conclusion is, not that hardships are desirable, but that virtue is desirable, which enables us patiently to endure hardships.
So Lucilius is asking Seneca if being brave while being tortured is a good thing. Does that mean I should want to be tortured? And Seneca says, of course not. But if you are going to face hardships, things that are beyond your control, hopefully you'll have the skill set or the virtue of courage in this case to bear whatever comes your way. And having that virtue is a good thing. And that's what I get out of the reading today from Seneca. But if we haven't cultivated that virtue, then it's not going to be there when we need it. Much like going camping, you might bring a new gadget with you to start a fire, but if you haven't practiced using it at home, you probably won't get the fire started out in the woods. So, trying to slowly build up this virtue, this virtue of courage, of fortitude, is important in your everyday life, so that when something really comes along, you can bear and forbear. You can persist and resist in the face of hardship.
One might say that it's all well and good to say that we should exemplify courage when the situation calls for it, but I can say that that's probably easier said than done. And so the question becomes, how do we build up our courage in a practical sense? Oftentimes, it's hard to practice these things because the situations that call for courage are unusual. They're not an everyday occurrence. And so I have a couple ideas. One is that the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of adversity. And what that does is it takes away the shock of an unusual situation presenting itself because you will have anticipated it. And as part of that practice, you will have developed a rough action plan on how you want to behave when you're presented with that situation. So you won't freeze up as much, and maybe you can, even though it's an unusual and stressful situation, you'll be able to at least try to do something to make the situation better for yourself and for other people. Courage can also be developed by gradually exposing yourself to physical hardship because you'll build up that confidence knowing that your body is in good shape and your lungs are in good shape and that you can bear up under adversity. And I think that can help as well.
Kind of like exposure therapy. So, like I remember reading years ago the Guide to the Good Life by William Irvin, and I've done kind of what he does too occasionally. He was wanted to build up courage. So I think if I remember right, he played the banjo or he was learning it. So he would make himself play open mic nights in front of a crowd in order
Just to get over
just
his
to get
fears.
over the straight stage fright and everything else. Just he would do things that scared him a little bit. We're not doing crazy things, but he would do little tests of courage, things that required him to get up and be very uncomfortable in front of people, etc., just to kind of build that strength.
Now, I do have a quote here from Musonius Rufus that talks about how when you train yourself physically, you're simultaneously training your mind and you're building your confidence so that you can endure. There are two kinds of training, one in which is appropriate for the soul alone, and the other which is common to both soul and body. We use the training common to both when we discipline ourselves to cold, heat, thirst, hunger, meager rations, hard beds, avoidance of pleasures, and patience under suffering. For by these things and others like them, the body is strengthened and becomes capable of enduring hardship, sturdy and ready for any task. Training which is peculiar to the soul consists first of all in seeing that the proofs pertaining to apparent goods as not being real goods are always ready at hand, and likewise those pertaining to apparent evils as not being real evils, and in learning to recognize the things which are truly good and becoming accustomed to distinguish them from what are not truly good. In the next place, it consists of practice in not avoiding any of the things which only seem evil, and in not pursuing any of the things which only seem good, in shunning by every means those which are truly evil, and pursuing by every means those which are truly good. Musonius Rufus, on Training, Lecture 6.
I have a question, Dan.
Okay.
So this kind of ties into courage in a way. So to build new habits, they suggest you start small and you tie habits together and don't take on too many new changes at once. So, he's talking about training here, building courage, building, stoic habits, the ability to withstand hardship. But I also wonder if you can go to like a retreat and work on a bunch of things at once, if that doesn't work as well. Because isn't that what boot camp is like. You take a bunch of civilians and you remove them from the world for a while, and then you instill a whole bunch of new habits in them all at once, and a lot of new training. You
Well,
think that's
first they break
effective?
first they try to break you down basically and take away your individuality and then try to build you back up again in the form of the ideal soldier. So I don't know if the average stoic practitioner out there wants to go through basic training for that aspect of things. I mean, if they want to be a soldier, that's great, but yeah.
Well,
And
I
also,
don't necessarily.
I've also heard about like men's retreats where they basically take you pay an extraordinary amount of money, and then some guy screams at you and makes you like crawl through the mud, and they like
Right.
throw water in your face and stuff. And I don't recommend that either.
But
It just seems
in a
silly.
different vein, people go off to a meditation retreat in order to try to build new habits, new inner calm. It's like separating. This is maybe a
I
bit
would more
Epicurean.
recommend that. I would more
Yeah,
recommend doing something like that.
but yeah. So I was wondering if trying to build new habits, if what you think based on your military experience, though, if small gradual changes over the course of a long time would be more effective, or withdrawing from a lot of your normal tasks and doing a more intense training would have a bigger impact on the growth of a virtue like courage.
Well, I think for a lot of people, it comes down to practicality because the average person out there, they already have lots of responsibilities and roles that they fill in life. So the average person who's a parent or in the working world, they can't just retreat off into the wilderness for months at a time to, really do that stuff. So I think the idea of doing it slow and gradually and making it a marathon instead of a sprint for the most people, that's best. But if you're a young person, if you're just coming out of high school and you're 18 and you decide you want to test your mettle and become a soldier and you think that it's a good time to be doing such things, then go ahead.
Sounds like I want to work on a fire tower and work on myself for 6 7 months. I think that's what I want to do. Don't tell my
Okay.
wife and child.
I was going to say, I think you should consult your wife about this plan.
All right.
A lot of what Musonius Rufus was talking about, it was tied back into the idea that virtue is the only true good. Courage is closely tied to the Stoic aphorism, virtue is the only true good, and vice is the only evil. And the vast majority of the time, when we are presented with something that creates a proto passion of fear, it relates to something external. Something is threatening your physical well being, your wealth, your freedom, your social standing. And by remembering that virtue is the only true good and that the only true harm is moral corruption, you'll be reminded that you are not harmed when you lose an external. What harms you is to corrupt your character by behaving unjustly or through cowardice to allow injustice to befall someone else.
So that kind of flies in the face of the common misconception that the Stoics prefer inaction because nothing is, in their power, let's say. So,
Yeah, that's one of the common mistakes that people that aren't very familiar with the Stoic system think
but
and are mistaken.
inaction would be a form of cowardice in some cases and would actually reflect poorly on your character rather than being what you should do. You should have taken action to help that person who was being bullied, or that person who needed help crossing the street, or whatever it may be. But that's where another virtue will come into play that we'll talk about later, which is wisdom, learning when to act and when not to act, and those sorts of things.
Yes, prudence. I have a couple quotes from Marcus Aurelius that touches on this topic. There is nothing properly good for a man, but that which promotes the virtues of justice, temperance, fortitude, and independence, nor anything bad for him, but that which carries him off to the contrary vices. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Book 8.1. And also, remember upon all occasions to use the maxim, this thing presenting itself is not misfortune, but to bear it bravely is good fortune. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Book 4.49.
Well, we can't control what happens to us, but hopefully we have the skill set to bear it well, right?
Right. Don't go looking for trouble, but if it presents itself, then try to do what you can where you are and in the roles you fill. That's the way I started to look at it.
There you go. There you go. What does Epictetus have to say about this stuff, Dan? Now the time has come to die?
What do you mean by die? Do not use fine words, but state the facts as they are. Now is the time for your material part to be restored to the elements of which it is composed. What is dreadful in that? What loss to the universe will this mean? What strange or irrational event? Is this a thing to make one fear the tyrant? Is this what makes the swords of the guards seem long and sharp? Let others look to that. I have considered the whole matter, and no one has authority over me. God has set me free. I have learnt to understand his commands, and no one can make a slave of me any more.
Am I not master of your body?
What does that concern me?
Am I not master of your property?
Well, how does that concern me?
Am I not master of exile and imprisonment?
Again, I resign all, yes, and my body itself for you to deal with when you will. Exert your authority and you will learn how far it extends. Epictetus, Discourses, Book 4.7.
So now the time has come to die. And now what's he do? He does that stoic skill of breaking things down. What I forget the proper term for that. Do you remember what it is, Dan?
I believe you're referring to decomposition.
Decomposition. So, and that's kind of what he's actually talking about here. You're going to be broken down to your material parts and rejoin the universe. Then, well, I'm the master of your body. Pfft, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, how's that bother me? You know, all of these things are things beyond my power and have nothing to do with my will. You know.
Right. His physical body does not concern him in the sense that what concerns him is what's up to him. And what's up to him is behaving virtuously. So you can't corrupt him and coerce him into doing something unvirtuous out of concern for his body.
Yeah, which is what makes someone who's really mastered this such a excellent member of the community, because you can stand up for what is right and you're not going to worry about what people say about you, or what might happen. You're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and that's the virtuous thing to do, and the honorable and the beautiful thing to do.
Another way you can try to embody courage if you feel yourself faltering is to remember what roles you fill. When a fearsome appearance presents itself, it can be easy to either freeze up or to just flee the scene. And sometimes fleeing is appropriate and the only rational thing to do. But sometimes the appropriate thing to do is to stand your ground and try to do what you can to improve the world. And it can be helpful to think of your role. Think of what the ideal representative of your role would look like and how they would behave. And not every role that calls for courage is that of the military, law enforcement, or firefighter. Sometimes the role of citizens, neighbors, parents, siblings may call us to step into the breach and do what's right.
Epictetus, in another reading, talks about a father who fled his daughter's sickbed because she looked like she was dying, and he just couldn't stand the thought of that, so he ran off and went to a pub or wherever he went, and the doctors were still there, the nurses, and then he finally came back, and I think in his story she's okay when he comes back, but he says, isn't that the right thing to have done? And Epictetus says, no, your role as a father. What if the doctors had ignored their
What,
role and run off too?
what if her nursemaids had run away because they loved her and they were distressed? Leave a sick little girl by herself. Is that what would be appropriate because you all love her so much?
Right. You all love her so much that you left her to die by herself. Good job, everybody, And no one was there to help her. So you have to think about your role and what the ideal thing to do might be, and consider if what you're doing is sort of defying your role and breaking the vows you may have made to yourself about fulfilling that role.
Right. And this kind of shows how, once again, that the virtues are mutually supportive, interdependent on each other, because courage, okay, what use is it to know what the right thing to do is and what the just thing to do is if you don't have the courage to actually do it? Just thinking about something is not enough in order to make the world a better place for our fellow humans. You got to actually have the courage to do the thing, even when it's hard.
Yeah, and that's something that we could all use a little more of these days.
Unfortunately, I think we're living in a time where we're seeing more and more examples of people doing the hard thing. I think we've been spoiled by many years of tranquility, and now we're going through a time of strife.
Yeah, that much is certain. So start working on small acts of courage, and perhaps sooner than you think, you'll be capable of doing greater and greater acts out in the real world, and you'll be one step closer to sagehood, right?
Yes. I'd like to wrap things up with one more thought from Musonius Rufus. It is fitting that we stand firm and endure when we know that what we are suffering for is some good purpose, either to help our friends or to benefit our city, or to defend our wives and children, or, best and most imperative, to become good and just and self-controlled, a state which no man achieves without hardships. Musonius Rufus, Lecture 7.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Please rank and review the podcast. Email us at sundaystoic@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And next week, we'll be coming back to you with the virtue of justice. And until then, don't forget to seize the day.
Carpe diem!